give the rabbinate almost full authority to decide who is considered Jewish and who is not, without the cooperation from the Israeli Ministry of Interior, which now allows Israeli citizenships also for those who haven't converted to the Orthodox conversion. So this law, unfortunately, could seriously harm both the Jews and converts from non-Orthodox community, or so that we can gather as many names as possible from many converts worldwide that oppose this law. It's very, very serious, and I really hope we could change it, because there will be consequences regarding eligibility for making aliyah. No, but just please, when you get the letter, just take 1 second, write down your names there. Okay, so please do like this.
And forward it to everyone, and to everyone you know, Jewish or not. Very important.
Yeah, very, very, very important. Okay, so now I'm happy to introduce our topic for today, which is the Noahide scam. So I personally have to say that each time I talk about the seven Noahide laws, I instinctively like cringe a little bit, and that's why we exactly invited Rabbi Yosef Chaim today to explain us a little bit about what are those laws, the historical background over the years, and in particular what Rambam says about them in Mishnah Torah. So, Rabbi Yosef Chaim, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really an honor.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going live on my YouTube channel also as well, which I've never done before. So I've never done an audio test. So if anybody shows up for that, I don't know if they can even hear us. But yeah, every time I speak on this topic, there's people that reach out and say that they really appreciate it. So we need to spread awareness and get the word out there. And people need to understand the history of this. This is a modern problem. This is not something that has historically been in Jewish communities. And it's often taught as if, this is an ancient tradition, but it's really not. So, yeah, I'd really like to present some things about our history and spread awareness of it. So I guess I can just introduce myself for anybody that's not familiar with me. My name's Rabbi Yosef Chaim. I have a YouTube channel where I've spoke for many hours on this. If anybody wants to look at that, they're titled The Noahide Scam, Part 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think it's Part 3 where I rattle off probably 50 sources if anyone wants to go and look up the sources for where we get a lot of this stuff from. I actually wrote a book, you can see it here, called Welcome Home, a guide for conversion to Orthodox Judaism. In that book, I wrote a chapter called The Noahide Scam, and I thought, well, what can I really say that I haven't said in hours already on my channel? So I really tried to focus that chapter on how did we get here? How did this get started? How could this have been prevented? And I think I did a really great job on that. But if nobody wants to buy the book, it's fine. One of my friends, Ashley, she read that chapter. We uploaded it to my YouTube channel, so you can listen to that chapter on audio. She did a great job reading it. So if you just visit my channel, Rabbi Yosef Chaim, you can hear that chapter for free. And then so I was a little, when I got asked to do this, I was like, well, I've kind of covered this extensively. What am I going to talk about today? So I put together a short presentation where I try to focus on, usually our options are not between what's horrific and what's utopian. It's usually between what's good and what's better. I always present Judaism as the better option. And so I think people that have fallen for this scam, they are really missing out on what's better. And the more I think about it, I really I struggle to say why falling for this scam is even good. I mean, those that are familiar with the 7 laws that were picked by rabbis to follow, um, you know, they're not even commanded to sanctify God's name. And of course, they're prohibited from cursing God, which is good that that's there, but they have no obligation to live their life in a way where people looking at them would say, now that's a person that lives his life in a way that Hashem would be proud of. So is that even a good option, with nothing for you to strive towards and improve towards? So I don't view a lot of the things that we have to follow as Jews. If we see an animal with a load, that it's struggling under, we have to help that animal. Whereas someone who's following this primitive system of of obeying 7 laws has no obligation to help that animal. So not only do they not have to live in a way that we see God says pleases him in the Torah, some of them get to brag about how they're better than all the other Gentiles because they've committed to following 7 laws that rabbis talk them into following. And now they're better than their neighbors who are striving to follow better moral, ethical standards. Many of these people came to convert because they left their previous religion, who forces them to at least follow the 10 Commandments. And these people now think they're somehow superior because they've reduced that down to 7. So I really struggle to even pitch this as a good thing. So, but even if you find that it's good, Judaism might not be for everybody, but I think everyone that comes to convert has already made a decision that they've realized that the Torah is true, the God of Israel is the only true path, and that's the path that they should be on, is the one that they came to get entrance in. I don't think they should be discouraged and sold this bill of goods as an alternative. I'll just start with this. I'm known for being a little bold, so this might sound a little salacious, and if it offends some people, then I've probably done my job and caught your attention. So I'll stay afterwards and take questions. So if I can just get through this, I promise I'll answer any questions that you have. So I call this the Noahide scam, and I'd like to talk to you about it. It sounds righteous on the surface, but it's actually what I view as a distortion of Torah and history. It's what I call the Noahide scam. This refers to the modern idea that non-Jews can or should follow 7 Noahide laws as a valid religious alternative to conversion. You'll see rabbis online promoting it, organizations trying to create Noahide communities, and even politicians treating it as a universal moral code. But none of this has any basis in Torah law. And for 2,000 years of Jewish history, no one, not the sages, not the Gaonim, not the Rishonim, ever proposed such a thing. So, what are 7 laws? Let's start with the actual source. It's in Rambam Mishneh Torah, Hilchot Malachim, chapter 9, Halakha 1. It says, Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded by the Almighty to compel all the inhabitants of Israel to accept the commandments of the children given to Noah, given to the children of Noah. He then lists the 7: idolatry, blasphemy, murder, sexual immorality, theft, establishing courts, and eating from a living animal. That's it. These are the minimum standards for human civilization, not a path to spirituality or religion. They are moral obligations, not a covenant or a faith system. The so called Noahide religion is nothing more than a modern fabrication. The rabbis of the Talmud never agreed on what these laws even were. Sanhedrin 56b lists 7. Others said 30 or more. Some say 66. And Avodah Zarah 2b into 3a says that God himself nullified them when the nations failed to keep them. No nation in history ever lived by a Noahide code, and no Sanhedrin ever enforced or taught it as a religion. Even Rambam, who summarized the discussion, did not create a new faith. He was describing a theoretical legal category that only existed when Israel had its own court to govern non Jews living under Jewish law, much like any country enforcing its civil code. Once the temple fell and the Sanhedrin ceased, that framework ended. So to claim that people today can follow 7 laws as an alternative to Judaism is a pure invention, a postmodern fantasy with no halakhic authority, no historic precedent, and no covenantal meaning whatsoever. So the real definition of a ger toshav in Hilchot Avodah Zarah, we'll find this in Mishneh Torah. It's listed as Hilchot Avodat Kochavim, laws of star worshippers, which is synonymous with Gentiles. Chapter 10, Halakha 6, Rambam writes that a ger toshav is a non-Jew who formally accepts before a bet din not to serve idols and to observe the 7 laws. However, Rambam adds a crucial line. We accept the ger toshav only in the time when Yovel is practiced, And in Hilchot Shemitah V'Yovel, chapter 10, halakha 8 through 9, he states clearly that Yovel, the Jubilee year, applies only when the majority of Israel resides in the land. This is something we don't even have today. Yes. So this is something we don't have today. He's referring to a future era. But he states clearly there that no Yovel, no Ger Toshav. So right now it's a status that simply doesn't exist. Although it will in the future. So he continues in Hilchot Malachim, Laws of Kings, chapter 11, halakha 1, where he starts off stating that in a future era, an era that we are not yet in, we will have Mashiach and all laws will be restored. Yovel, Sanhedrin, the full judicial system, everything will revert to the way that it once was. Only then could the status of a Ger Toshav return in any meaningful sense. Until that happens, the only way for a non Jew to become part of the covenantal community of Israel is through conversions. Now, this is where people will say, okay, yes, technically you're right about the word Ger Toshav, but there's another term that's mentioned almost never, very rarely. That's the wise of the nations, which they misinterpret. So some people will point to Rambam's phrase, the Hasidei Umot Ha'olam, the righteous of the nations, or the wise among the nations. And the phrase Hachamim Be'omat Ha'olam, the wise among the nations, is not a religious category at all. It appears in the Talmud several places, Eicha Rabbah 213, Bava Batra 15b, Avodah Zarah 3a, simply to acknowledge that non-Jews can possess wisdom, talent, or scientific insight. For example, the sages said, if someone tells you there is wisdom among the nations, believe it. If they tell you there is Torah among the nations, do not believe it. This is Eicha Rabbah 213. Means, yes, the nations have intelligence and knowledge, but not divine revelation. So the phrase was never meant to describe a religious status that someone could join. It just recognizes intellectual ability. Some modern promoters of the Noahide scam even try a category called the wise among the nations, as if being a decent scientist or philosopher somehow earns you a religious title. But that phrase in the Talmud never described a spiritual path or a covenant. It was simply a compliment, like saying there are smart people in other countries. To turn that into a system that people are supposed to join is absurd. It's like taking a casual remark about intelligence and marketing it as a new religion. There's no mention of it anywhere in Torah, no literature, no structure, just an invented label built out of a line in a commentary. Yet modern promoters package it as if it were an ancient truth, misleading vulnerable seekers who come in good faith to learn Judaism and instead are handed an empty label with no foundation. But because they cherry pick sentences to find the term righteous of the nations, they will say, see, Rambam praises them, but they fail to finish his sentence. He writes in Hilchot Malachim, this is the sentence that's always cherry picked by people who do not read Mishnah Torah. They'll take this one sentence and they'll quote where he says, anyone who accepts these 7 laws and observes them carefully is considered one of the righteous of the nations and has a share in the world to come. If he accepts them because the Holy One commanded them through Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, I have to point out here, he says if you follow these 7 laws because out of intellectual conviction, you just have no desire to murder anyone, you think it's right to be a good member of society, not to steal, you raise your children. Well, if you steal from people, they'll steal from you. That makes a bad society. If you follow these 7 laws because you think it's a good idea, you get nothing. No share in the world to come, no reward, zip, zero, zilch, nada. This is what Rambam says. But then he says here, if you follow them, because you believe the Midrash, the folklore and legend that Hashem commanded Moses to teach people this, then you get a share in the world to come. So it sounds a little like Christianity. Your share in the world to come is based on whether you have a belief, whether you have these thoughts in your mind or not how you act, behave. Whether you follow these 7 laws has nothing to do with it. You only get something if you have the belief in your mind. Now, clearly, Rambam doesn't get to decide who goes where when they die. To come. If you believe this midrash that Moses was instructed this, one he might not even believe himself. But that means he's not inventing his own religion. He's not founding a Noahide church. He's recognizing Jewish revelation through and Torah authority. Even then, Rambam never tells such a person to remain where they are. In fact, one paragraph earlier, he says that a Gentile who chooses to convert is entirely welcome, and the Torah opens that door wide. The Torah is the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob and all those who desire to convert. Meaning, if you have not converted to Judaism, but you have the desire to convert, the Torah is as much your inheritance as it is mine, and you should not be scammed out of that. So, this righteous of the nations category is not an alternative to conversion to Judaism. It's simply a recognition that decent human beings who acknowledge Torah authority can merit reward. That's it. No communities, no ceremonies, no parallel covenant. Rambam's mention,
You basically say that the Torah belongs to all.
yes, the whole world. And in fact, and everyone who has the desire to convert and enter that covenant, the whole world has an invitation. And if you want to know how halacha functions, we find this according to Rambam and Hilchot Mamrim. I have many videos of this on my channel. I recommend everybody learn this. But he says there that anyone who believes that the Torah is true should make all their actions dependent on the court, because that is the source of Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law, are the rulings of that court. So if you believe the Torah is true and was given to Moses, the Torah commands us to follow the rulings of the court. You should behave this way. You should be following the rulings of the court, even if you don't have the opportunity. Today, it's not easy to convert. If you live in an area where you don't have access to a synagogue, a rabbi that's willing to convert you, unfortunately, I think it's a Hilul Hashem, but there are entire continents where people are not able to get a conversion, sincere seekers. If that's you, the Torah doesn't tell you to accomplish something that's not possible. If you can't get the conversion, you can still enter a covenant with Hashem. Even if you don't have the legal status as halakhically Jewish, you can make all of your religious acts dependent on the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the rulings of that court. That means you should be following halakha to the best of your ability. Even if not 100% obligated, this is what you should be aspiring to. It's in no way a substitute to say, well, I followed, some basic minimal standard that the world has moved past thousands of years ago. Today, fortunately, you don't have to be told murder is wrong. We shouldn't do things with animals or women that don't consent. I mean, that's against the law in every country. It's not something to celebrate that you're not doing this with animals. And, so, I think converting to Judaism is what people came to do to begin with, is the path that they should not be. So Rambam's mention of a share of the world to come for those who keep the seven laws is not a license for a new faith. It's simply his philosophical reflection on human decency. The Torah itself never lists where after death or who is guaranteed reward. That judgment belongs to God alone. Rambam could outline legal categories, but he could not decide anyone's eternal fate. At most, he was distinguishing between two kinds of behavior: the ordinary person who avoids theft or murder because they know it's wrong, and the person who says, I recognize the God of Israel and I don't want to live in a way that dishonors him. Both are moral, both achieve the same thing in this world, but neither represents a separate covenant religion. To elevate Rambam's speculative comment into a salvation plan for non Jews is to mistake one philosopher's opinion for divine revelation. And to build an entire movement on that misunderstanding is worse than misguided. It's a deliberate distortion of Torah itself. So here's what I want everyone to understand clearly. For 2,000 years, no rabbi, no community, no bet din ever offered Noahidism as an alternative to conversion. You can search every halakhic code from the Talmud to through the Geonim, the Rishonim, and Achronim. You will not find a single synagogue, village, or bet din that ever told Gentiles, you don't need to convert, just be Noahides. That concept did not exist until the late 20th century. And I don't want you to think that I'm exaggerating here. I've been posting a challenge for years now to rabbis who are pushing this Noahide movement. I've challenged all of them. Is there any community anywhere on the planet, in any continent, in any generation for the last 2,000 years that has pushed Noahidism as an alternative to Judaism? And not a single one of them has provided me with one example. These are the rabbis that are pushing this Noahide movement. And when I say they failed to provide an example, I do not mean they provided examples and I've debunked them. I mean, they won't even present one example. Where if they did, then I could say, okay, well, they were wrong for doing so. They were misguided. They have a whole new set of problems. Now we have Jewish rabbis teaching Torah, what the Torah says about Noahides. We can't even get to that stage because they can't provide one community that's been doing this. There is no Masorah for doing this until 50 years ago. Maybe someone today will provide me the first example, but for literally years, I've been asking the people selling this Noahide movement to provide me one historic example anywhere on the planet, at any generation, on any continent in the last 2,000 years. They failed to provide me with one example.
When and why did it start?
It started about 50, 60 years ago, I think by Chabad, when to their credit, they started doing kiruv. They started reaching out to reaching out to non-religious Jews and trying to make them religious, which is a good thing to do. I'm glad they're doing it. And in that process, non-Jews started hearing this and saying, this sounds amazing. I'd like to be part of that. However, they have mystical reasons for saying that they prefer to make people who are halakhically Jewish become religious. They don't really want the non-Jews. So they started offering this as a way to get rid of non-Jews that wanted to convert. I mean, they've known that we need the Messianic era for this. But some section of them felt like they have their Messiah, and they said, okay, we don't have the Messianic era yet. We don't have, Ger Toshav. We don't have Yovel. We don't have a Sanhedrin. But we've got the Mashiach. That's close. We're going to have everything else soon. So we're close enough to start offering this as a path to non-Jews. So that got them to get rid of the non-Jews that they didn't want. And so this is a very modern invention. And that's when it started. And I'm going to elaborate on that more in just a moment. If I could have just like 2 more minutes, I could finish this.
Just pause it for a second. We have a few questions from the audience.
Sure, go ahead.
Maya, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Rabbi Yosef. Hi, thank you. Thanks, Noah. Thank you for the opportunity. So initially, my question. Sorry, my name is Maya. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland, where I'm dialing in from today, and I'm grateful for this. So initially, my questions are the same, and that is, why then and how then did it start, and what is the purpose of it? And thank you for that explanation. So it sounds like the scam is more of like, okay, we now have allies, but they're not our own. So we can get help when we need it.
Yeah. It's a second class. It's a class of second class citizens, which I really don't know why anybody would want to be a part of. When you get into halakhically, if you remember from the Torah, the Egyptians did not feel that we were a strong enough force to conquer them, but they felt that if enemy nations attacked them, we might join the enemy, and that would be enough combined with us plus them to be a big problem for the Egyptians. And we see this play out halakhically when we were allowed to accept these people. We were allowed to move them without their consent. If we don't want you by the border for the same reason, because enemy nations might attack, being second class citizens, you might join them. So we would move them to the interior, even if they say, look, I'm happy to be here. I like living on the border. I don't want to be moved. They had no right to oppose us. We put them where we wanted them to be. Now, people will spin that and they'll say, well, we love these people. We don't want anything bad to happen to them. We don't want them to get injured if we're attacked. So we move them to the interior for safety. But they had no consent. They weren't allowed to decide where they wanted to live because they were not equals. I mean, who wants to join a group of people where they're not treated as equals? I mean, it was actually the next.
Sorry, go on. I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm going to take everyone's questions, but it was actually the next thing for me to say is how it's got started and why it's a scam. So that might answer some of your questions. But again, I'll stay as long as it takes and I'll answer all of them, I promise. So I don't want you to think that I'm not going to get to you. So
Thank you. Yeah. Just only one thing I wanted to say is,
Yeah.
It just sounds like, just with regards to everything, I don't know why there's so much time that is being invested into this when they wouldn't marry or wouldn't allow one of their kids to marry one of their own, one to marry a Noahide.
Correct.
So
yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Right. It's the whole thing about, well, this is what's good for me and my family, but from you, no. You should go over here and follow this system that I would never allow my daughter to marry somebody who thinks they're a good person because they follow this system. So I think people should be rightly offended by that. I mean, if you apply this to any other analogy, if you owned a restaurant, you would be proud of it. And if somebody came to your restaurant and said, I heard good things about this place, I can't wait to dine here, would you tell them, you have no obligation to eat here? I saw some reviews that there's another restaurant. It's not as good as mine. I would never eat there. I would tell my family to avoid that place, but you need to know you're not required to eat here. You could go to that other place that I wouldn't be caught dead in. And they're supposed to feel like, oh, wow, you care about me for sending me there. I don't have to eat in this place where your whole family is found. You would say this is stupid if you applied it to any other situation with no historical precedent until the last 50 years. But now, because it's popular today, many rabbis are getting donations and people are funding them to teach these classes. We just check our brains at the door and we just follow along. I mean, we didn't leave our previous religion and join this one because we checked our brains at the door. That didn't make sense to us there. Now we're going to blindly, if it doesn't make sense to us here, we have the right to question this stuff, and that's what we should be doing. So, great question. And again, I'm going to take the rest of, but if I could just have 2 more minutes. So the modern Noahide movement began roughly 50 years ago, engineered by certain outreach groups that realized they could control and pacify, and nowadays profit off of, potential converts, sincere seekers, by the way, by giving them a fake religion, a spiritual placebo meant to keep them permanently outside the Jewish people. This was done to sincere seekers, which is why it's such a predatory betrayal, an act of spiritual abuse and exploitation against those who were vulnerable and had their guard down and trusted rabbis the most. Rabbis who they feel are the ambassador between God and them, and they place trust in them. And that's why I'm so offended when I see these people being mistreated. It markets itself as if it were ancient, but it's a fabrication, a religious franchise built on mistranslating Rambam. So why is it a scam? It's a scam because it removes the context of Yovel and Ger Toshav that Rambam explicitly requires. It turns a civil status under Jewish law into a separate religion. It discourages sincere seekers from converting, effectively locking them out of the covenant that the Torah commands be open to all. It uses the prestige of Torah to sell a product that never existed in halakha, and that's dangerous because it replaces truth with sentimentality. It tells all Gentiles you don't need to become part of Israel, when Hashem Himself said the stranger who joins the covenant is loved and accepted. It says in Isaiah, "Let not the milkers think I wouldn't accept them." So let's be clear about the only true path. There is no Torah-based Noahide faith. There is no halakhic ger toshav, and the title Chasirei Umot Ha'olam, the righteous Gentiles, does not replace conversions. The Torah recognizes only one way to enter the covenant of Israel: conversion according to halakha. That is what makes one halakhically Jewish. Of course, if one were born to a Jewish mother, they would also be halakhically Jewish. But we're talking about Gentiles here who can't choose a Jewish woman to give birth to them, so their only option is to convert. When someone accepts mitzvot, immerses in the mikveh, joins the people of Israel, he or she stands before God exactly as any Jew by birth. This is the open door of Torah. This is the truth that Rambam teaches. So, in closing, I just want to leave you with the Noahide movement is not a revival of something ancient. It's a modern invention. It takes the universal morality that the Torah expects from all humanity and tries to turn it into a separate religion. Our task as Jews is to preserve the truth, not to market imitation spirituality. The righteous of the nations are praised when they live by Torah values, but the Torah never offered them a substitute for joining the covenant and has only ever been one true alternative to idolatry and falsehood, and that is to become part of Israel, to convert and live by the Torah that was given to all of us at Sinai. Thank you. And again, any of you have, I'm happy to answer the best that I can.
Yeah, so let's give it to Guillermo. I hope I spell it right. You can ask a question.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Rabbi, a couple of questions. Is it accurate that when Mashiach comes, conversions will close? Number one. And number two is if only Jews and righteous Gentiles have a share in the world to come, righteous Gentiles are really a very, very minimal fraction of the non-Jewish population, which is most of the world. So what will happen to all the rest of the people who live, let's say, a good life, but never even had the chance to hear about Torah or Noahide? So those are.
Yeah, so I have a short memory, so I might forget by the time I answer the first one. So you may need to remind me about the second one. Okay, so the first one is what's going to happen in the Messianic era. I think you should understand there's different opinions about this. So there are some opinions that magical things are going to happen. Tigers are no longer going to eat goats. They're going to become vegetarians again. Okay, so that's one view. Rambam's view is that nothing is going to change in the world. It just means we're going to get to live in the land, the Holy Land, in peace. We're going to be able to study Torah in peace. That means there's still going to be wars happening outside of the land, but we're not going to be affected by it. There's going to be a political king who will preside over a time of peace for us. He gets this notion from Rabbi Akiva, who said that Bar Kokhba could be the Mashiach. Bar Kokhba led a revolt. Nobody expected Bar Kokhba, who could be the Mashiach, to perform miracles. So that's where Rambam gets his idea of what the Messianic era is going to be like. So it's not unanimous what it's going to be like. But if you take the prophecy that says the whole world is going to be united to one religion, I think that's great. We think that religion is going to be Judaism. And we see there's things as Jews we're not allowed to do on Shabbat. We're not allowed to do shechita. We can't shecht animals, right? But the Kohanim could. So this goes to show Judaism provides a mechanism for whatever needs to be done, Jews will be allowed to do. Meaning, if somebody gets injured on Shabbat, there will be somebody there, God willing, he'll be Jewish and religiously observant, that will be allowed to drive them in the ambulance to the hospital and get them the help they need under Pekuach Nefesh. We don't need a second class of non-Jews that say that we can tell them, listen, this task beneath me, I can't do it, but you're a non-Jew. You can do it so we can live our lives fulfilling mitzvot. I mean, everyone under one religion will be united to serve God the way that God chooses in the Messianic era. So that's the belief. No need for what?
For conversion?
Conversion?
Yeah, so I conversion when Mashiach comes, no more conversions. That's what I heard.
So
I'm asking if that's accurate.
that's the opinion of some.
Okay.
That's not unanimous though.
Okay. Okay.
So
And what happens? What happens in Olam Haba?
when we die, the next world.
Yeah. What happens to non-Jews who didn't even hear about the Noahide laws or what happened to them? So they don't have a share?
So that's the other thing that I want everybody to realize. It is not unanimous. There are different opinions about it. There's a Tosefta, which is very early literature, where I think it's Rabbi Eliezer brings the opinion that Gentiles get no share in the world to come, nothing. There's a midrash where one of the rabbis goes up there to Olam Haba and they say, "What did you see?" As I see Mashiach on the throne next to Hashem, and they said, "Did you see any Gentiles up there?" And he says, "No, they don't exist up there. They only exist down here." Then a later rabbi came in and introduced the notion that, well, this can't be true, can it? Isn't it only Gentiles that don't get a share in the world to come, the ones that deny God's sovereignty, and don't some of them get a share in the world to come? So there's a debate about that. Then most of the ones that are pushing this idea that if you follow these 7 laws, and you of course also believe the folklore and legend that to Moses to force this on the rest of, which would be a great sentence to have in Torah, which I guess Hashem forgot and omitted for Torah. He forgot to put that there. That you'll get a share in the world to come. They usually don't tell people that the opinions of the rabbis that say, if you follow these 7 laws, yes, you'll get a share in the world to come, but it's not the same as what we get as Jews. It's a much lower portion. So it's like saying, you're going to get into the parking lot of an event where there's a ticket taker there. And if you're Jewish, you get to come in. You get the highest share. You get inside the building. If you follow the 7 laws, you can be in the parking lot. You can be outside of it. You're not going to get the same thing that all the first class citizens get, but you do get into somewhere. It's not nothing, you know. But I think we do have to entertain, if we're intellectually honest, we have to entertain the share that what if we don't get anything when we die? Is that a possibility? The Torah says, do not concern yourself with the secret things. Those are for Hashem. You should concern yourself with what has been revealed, which is for you to do. There is no statement in Torah, which we believe is divine, given by God, where it says, you go here, you go there. That leaves us to the opinions of rabbis. There's opinions in the Talmud that says, every Jew gets a share in the world come. And then these are the ones that don't. So there are opinions that even Jews get no share in the world to come. There's a debate in the Talmud between the scholars of the yeshivot of Babylon and the yeshivot of Israel, where they say, what after we've been exiled, what do you hold important? And they say these are the ones, the Jews, who descend into Gehinnom that do not ascend. So then the other rabbi says, is it really these that do not ascend? That already leaves you at what does this mean? Does this mean Jews go into Gehinnom and they're there forever? Or does it mean they descend down to Gehinnom, and it's not forever, but they just don't descend. They don't come out of it. They end while they're there. So this is where the discussion comes for those that descend down. Is it only for 12 months as a maximum? These are opinions of the rabbis. It's not unanimous. So when somebody comes to convert and wants to join us, I think you are robbing them of informed consent. When you tell them you don't have to convert, you could just follow this other system of following 7 laws. You get something in the world to come, and not tell them that it's not unanimous. There are rabbis that believe you get nothing. There are rabbis that believe you won't get left out. You will not get what you came to get. You did not get into the section that most rabbis believe that all Jews are going to get. So I think you're robbing them of informed consent if you don't let them know all of the opinions and then let them make a decision. And if you want to follow halakha, I recommend everyone do this because you have to know most rabbis do not perform conversions, so they're not educated on the laws of conversions. They'll tell you, I don't perform conversions. You have to be an expert on this. If you go to the Mishnah Torah, it's 2 chapters. Suribiyah chapter 13 and 14. If you say, I don't care what Rambam says, Mishnah Torah, the only complete codification of halakha that we have to this very day, it means nothing to me. Every rabbi I talk to goes by the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, open the Shulchan Aruch. You can find it on Sefaria. It's Yoredea 268. It's 1 chapter. It's an abridged version of what we find in Mishnah Torah. It's 1 chapter. You can read it in 10 minutes. And you can see the laws of conversion. And there we find when a person comes to convert, we tell them the world that is hidden away for the righteous, those are Israel, nation of Israel. Olam Haba is only for the Jews, the nation that you came to convert. That is Israel. At no point in time do we offer them an alternative, tell them that there's opinions that you might get to go somewhere if you don't convert and you follow this other system instead. Instead, he ignores all the opinions that you could get something for following 7 laws, and he tells us the halakha is when a person comes to convert, we tell them only Israel gets a share in the world to come. Rabbis today ignore that halakha, and they say, well, we're actually commanded to ignore that halakha and tell you that you could follow a different system. So I think everyone needs to be aware. What rabbi ever tells you where to find the halakha of conversions? Anyone who's already converted, you've gone through the whole process. Were you ever told this is how it's supposed to be? And this is where we, the converting rabbis, the ones who perform conversion, this is how we know, because this is where the halakha is found. None of them tell you that.
No, they didn't tell me.
So I see in the chat, they want to know what chapter in Yoredea. It's 268. That's an abridged version of what we find in Asuri Bia, Prohibited Relations, chapter 13 and 14 in the Mishnah Torah. And it's literally, most of it's word for word. We find in Bia an example where you have to have 3 Jews on the Bet Din. In the Shulchan Aruch, it says ideally that's how you would do it, with 3 Jews that keep kosher, the Shomer Shabbat. But Bed Yavad, after the fact, if a conversion was done with 2, this is a kosher conversion. Meaning if you have to disqualify one of the people on your Bet Din, that means you were converted with only 2. After the fact, this is still a kosher conversion. This is how conversions have been done for thousands of years, for all of history.
Pretty rough.
And by the way, for people asking for sources, if you go to my channel, there's an entire video on the reason I went online and started a YouTube channel was for one reason only. I started a program that I created called Defending Converts to Judaism. We go through a long letter written by Rabbi Mark Angel, the former head of the RCA, called Conversion to Judaism, Halacha, Hashkafa, and Historic Challenge. It's like 14 pages. We do one video on every page. Then I go through the laws of conversion, including the Suribiyah, chapter 13, another video on chapter 14. We do a video on Suribiyah. We go through the Talmud and Yevamot, chapter 47. We read what all the halakha says. If you want to know how halakha functions, I have multiple videos on that. Hilchot Mamrin. 4 videos or more on the Noahide scam. I mean, there's plenty of content. Believe me, I'm only here for converts and people that need this kind of help for education, continuing education. You should go to your rabbi, convert with what's available to you. Don't challenge them. Accept whatever he says, but for your own personal knowledge, you are not prohibited from learning any of this stuff. And I provide continuation. If you'd like to join me, I teach classes once a week. You can join in addition to the classes you're already taking. It's not a substitute. It's just in addition to where you're already getting your education from. That's what I'm here for.
Thank you, Anya. Your turn.
Thank you. I think it might be also important for everyone to know if a rabbi has the obligation to convert, because basically all the rabbis who do the Noahide scam could also say, sorry, I'm not converting. Find a different rabbi.
That's true. That's true. I don't have to do anything but stay Jewish. If somebody comes to me and converts, there's no halakha that I can point to and say, if I don't convert you, I have violated this. I don't have any obligation to convert anybody. So we can't demonize them if they choose not to. However, if somebody else does the conversion, I cannot nullify a halakhic conversion. Meaning, if you come to me and you say, hey, I convert, and this was the bet dean that converted me, I can say, you know what? I don't like that bet dean. I don't like that rabbi. I don't think that rabbi should have converted you. And if you came to me, I wouldn't have converted you. However, the fact is, he did convert you. According to halakha, I cannot nullify that conversion. There's no statement that says you have to. As a matter of fact, it's in the Shulchan Aruch. If a Torah scholar walks into the room and he's not your rabbi, you have to stand up for him because he is a Torah scholar. You have to respect him. So therefore, if somebody did a halakhic conversion, even if you don't like the guy, you have to respect. According to halakha, there's nothing that says you can nullify that halakha. Even if you're sad that they did the conversion, it's a halakhic conversion. It cannot be nullified. And this is why I want you to understand the law. It says in Asari Bia, chapter 13 or 14, I don't remember which one. If a person comes to convert with ulterior motives, and we know he had ulterior motives, because the day after we convert him, he starts serving idols. This is something you could be given the death penalty for. This is an apostate Jew. An apostate is not a non-Jew, and his kiddushin is valid. He is allowed to marry into the Jewish people while he is actively serving idols. How can this be? Because the conversion was done, you can't nullify it. Even one that we discovered, he converted with ulterior motives from the beginning. He lied to the Bet Din to get the conversion. Once he has it, he is a Jew, and you can't nullify it. And this is where I see people mistreating them, saying, well, that's not the way I do conversions. What do you mean they converted you? Well, you didn't convert up to my standards, so I can't recognize it. You are obligated to recognize it. And there's no halakha justifying you for mistreating a convert and nullifying the halakhic version. So no, they don't have any obligation to convert you if they don't want to. But where most rabbis fall short is failing to recognize the validity of conversions that other rabbis did. And that's where I think we need to be there and educate people. Put it on them. If you're not going to recognize my conversion, show me where it was done incorrectly. Show me which halakha was not done properly, so we can get it done properly. Let's do a ger l'chumrah if that's what it takes. But the onus is on them. If they're going to mistreat you, they wouldn't do that with any native born. As a matter of fact, Asuri Bia chapter 12, halakha 17 says there is no difference between a native born and one who converts. If you go into a synagogue and they say, for example, well, you're driving here. How can you be halakhically Jewish? You converted. Same way everyone who drove here. We're both halakhically Jewish. You don't question the halakhic status of them. How can you question the halakhic status of mine? Now, if you don't want to give me an aliyah because you say I need to be frum as a convert, that's fine. But there's no difference between me and the native born. I better not see you giving an aliyah to someone who drove here who's halakhically Jewish because his mother was born Jewish. There's no difference between a native born and a convert. So if you don't give aliyot to people who are not frum, fine, neither one of us get one. But you need to treat us as equals because we're not second-class citizens.
Laser.
All right. I had a quick question. Have you ever read the Divine Code?
No,
Ever studied it?
no,
No?
I have not.
Okay. I belong to a Noahide group also. And when you had mentioned that where they don't recognize Hashem, that it's not taught, I have, it's huge.
Who are we saying doesn't recognize Hashem?
Well, and first you said it's not commanded.
Correct. There's no obligation for them to
And-
sanctify Hashem's name.
Well,
They're commanded
it's
not to
like
curse
the very-
Hashem. It's what?
Well, it's like the very first thing for us to recognize Hashem as one and only God.
Yeah.
But I'm not arguing. I mean, I'm interested. I even sent you a message on your YouTube channel about asking for the link to the teaching that you had shared.
Oh,
from the
yeah,
Quran.
yeah. Yeah, and I sent the
Yeah, that
source.
was me.
No, I think that's great. I think the whole world should recognize Hashem. I think that's why he put the first sentence in Bereshit. It's his world. He created it. I think the whole world should recognize him.
And on the like in the Noahide code, basically a lot of it is off of Rambam's teachings. Much of it, it's based off like the laws of foundation of the Torah. It even gives you like details of faith. But anyway, I had some questions for the Noahide group that I belong with also, because I have concerns about I love to convert. I feel it in my soul. There's no explanation.
Then I think you should convert. And I wanna hear the rest of what you're saying, and I want to answer that. But I just want to make clear this divine code that I haven't read. You say it's based off of Rambam. This is
A
not,
lot of Rambam's teachings, yes.
but not something that Rambam actually taught. It's somebody that took what Rambam said and they're building that book. There's no book by Rambam that Rambam wrote that you could say, look at what Rambam says. They're taking sentences and they're building a story that they are attributing to Rambam. Because Rambam didn't have a Noahide community. He didn't teach Judaism to Jews and this other group in his community, right? So this is a later invention that people, the authors of that book or whoever taught those authors, they're attributing these beliefs to Rambam. It's not something that he did.
Now, I haven't converted because I know in some it's about living close to a shul within walking distance. There are some
Yeah.
some rabbinic teachings, some kind of are a little bit more lenient if you convert, say, reform or I've never. I mean, I haven't. I started to, but I was turned away the first time, and that was a year ago. And
Sorry to hear that.
I haven't approached since. But in some ways, for me, I haven't tried it again because I cannot move. I cannot move closer to the shore. It's virtually impossible for me. So my thing is, what about us Gentiles? What about us who don't convert, or who? Because I mean, with the Noahide thing, I don't even call myself a Noahide. I call myself a Gentile who believes in Torah and Judaism. That's what I call myself.
Yeah, you're a Jew in transition. You're a Jew who has not converted yet. So you don't have the legal status. But I think Bezrat Hashem, one day you will convert. There's no obligation to live in a Jewish community. There's no halakha. I mean, that's very popular. Most every Orthodox rabbi is going to tell you that you have to. And that's what they demand. But there's no obligation. You don't have to. And recently, like I guess it's been 5 years now since we all went through COVID, much of the world has migrated to the internet. There's places where you can get what you need. You can get your fulfillment online. And I don't think because you don't live in a Jewish community, you should be excluded. I'm one of the rabbis with Torah Judaism International. I'm not the only one. I see Rabbi Ariel Manning is here. He's one of them. I can put you in contact with Rabbi Asher Meza. We can give you the classes. If you don't feel whole without a conversion, we can convert you. It's a 1 day process. You can come down and convert with Asher in South Florida, and you can be halakhically Jewish. And you won't be living in a community, but we can connect you with all the resources that you need. You do not have to be excluded. And for thousands of years, do you think every Jew was in walking distance of a synagogue? No, we weren't.
There's been so many, I can't think of each and every question I've ever had in this community where I've asked all these and have not been satisfied with a lot of the questions that they've given me.
Well, I'll also say, if you could do a conservative conversion, and there you don't have to live in a synagogue. You can drive to the synagogue, and that's an option. Now, most Orthodox won't recognize it because they consider driving on Shabbat to be a violation of Shabbat. So the problem there is the conservative Bet Din. How can they be considered a frum Bet Din if they're doing what the Orthodox congregation considers to be a violation of Shabbat? But truth be told, you could be in a conservative synagogue and be 100% frum. There are conservative Jews that daven in conservative synagogues. They're 100% frum. They don't drive there. They walk. And if your conversion was done there, meaning at a conservative synagogue, but you had 3 Orthodox Jews on your Bet Din, it doesn't have to be 3 rabbis. If those 3 Orthodox Jews converted you, even if it's at a conservative synagogue, that is an Orthodox conversion. So when you come to us and say, I converted at a conservative synagogue, I don't assume the worst. I don't assume these were 3 Reform Jews that were on your Bet Din. Until I have a reason to feel that I have to disqualify somebody on the Bet Din, I'm going to assume everything was done according to halakha. And if you're finding what you're needing at this conservative synagogue, or if you want to convert with us, that way you have a kosher Orthodox Bet Din. Once you're Jewish, you're Jewish. If you then choose to attend a non-Orthodox synagogue, you are halakhically Jewish. If you don't keep Shabbat and you fall short, you miss the mark, well, I hope that's a bump in the road and you'll try and you'll get better and not miss the mark next week. But that doesn't affect your Jewish status. You are just as Jewish as anyone else is. So if what you need is a conversion, I think you should get that no matter where you live. And we'll help you.
Lisa, I'll speak to you after, okay?
Yes.
Next question is Shalom Raj, right? It's Sharon.
Hi, Noah. Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom.
Rabbi, let me put the questions in short, keeping the time in mind. So basically, I've been traveling in the conversion of Judaism for the last 15 years. I've been accepted in Mahon Mayor, but unfortunately, I did not get the visa. I'm from India. So right now, I've been observing or following the Judaism, the laws, and keeping Shabbat. I'm trying to be a Shomer Shabbat. I'm trying to be keep the kashrut laws and everything, in India. So what I would like to see, at the other end, I also see a big Noahide community in my city or in my state. So as per your message, you're saying that before 20th century there was no concept of Noahide.
Correct.
So you're saying that this is all like a man-made creation or a man-made religion, to keep it in that terms.
100%.
Man-made terms. So what if a person, who knows that, he cannot halakhically, put all the, or, he cannot being able to be a Shomer Shabbat, and he knows that his limitations. Maybe he might have to go for a job, or maybe he might have to cook something on Shabbat. When you know all these limitations, what are the other options for him to serve Hashem other than being a Jew?
Um, if you're not able to convert, you can still enter a covenant with God. You know, converting gives you that legal halakhic status. It's like a person who, you know, if your mother's Jewish, halakhically you're Jewish.
Right.
A lot of these women go out and they have children with non-Jewish men. They're not observant. You know, they're not religious. These children are halakhically Jewish. They make no effort to follow halakha. You know, so
Right, they're born Jews. I mean, but our situation is something different, right? You know, a person have, you know, he's limited to up to certain things. He may not be able to keep everything. He may not be a Shomer Shabbat. He may not be, you know, Shomer Kashrut. But the thing is that, but still he want to serve Hashem. So
right.
under which category he will be considered in future? Maybe once the Mashiach is here, so he will be considered as a Gentile still, or he will be considered as a Jew, uh, though he hasn't, you know, done the conversion. And the third point, God forbid, you know, if something goes wrong, what would be his status in the Olam Haba?
Well, so that's why I
What he's
don't.
considered as.
That's why I don't think Hashem cares about the halakhic status. These people that are born to non-religious Jewish women, they're not religious. They make no effort whatsoever. They're not in a covenant with God. What covenant did they agree to accept? Nothing. They were just born like everyone else was born. So someone like you who doesn't convert and you're making an effort, I think Hashem sees that. You can be in a covenant with God. You can keep everything as much as you can. And I think that's important. I think Hashem sees that. And I think he values what you're doing more than someone who has the halakhic status is, well, my atheist mother is halakhically Jewish and neither me nor my mother does anything. So we're somehow special to Hashem. I think your efforts are noticed, and I think you can be in a covenant without the halakhic status. Although, if you want the halakhic status, Rabbi Asher has several communities in India. I know he set up several Batei Din there. They have a mikveh. So I don't know how close proximity to them you are, but there are communities in India.
It's next to my state, and that's going to be my next question. Sorry to object in between. So coming to Hashem Mezab, so you're saying that, I mean, he has done a lot of conversions in the state of Andhra. I've seen it, and I have known few people, you know, who are part of the conversion, and the leaders as well, who has conducted those sessions. So what would be the situation like, you know, if, I mean, for example, taking an example, if Asher Meza has converted me, and without any Jewish education, you know, I got converted under him. And after a few days, if I'm not keeping Shabbat, if I'm not keeping the halakhic laws, then who is going to be responsible for that? Is it Asher Meza or me? Because
You
he
are
converted me without giving any Jewish education.
no.
And he doesn't know what my halakhic status is.
So according to the halacha, when a person comes to convert, it gives us exactly what we tell them. We give two examples. Before you converted, you were not liable for Shabbat. You were not liable for eating fats. Now, after you convert, you are liable for these things. And that's all we really tell them. And then we tell them a second time when they're in the mikveh. So these people don't even know what Shabbat is. They don't know what the 39 melachot. They're giving a general acceptance that I am going to live by these laws. And then the obligation is on them. We don't convert anybody. You convert yourself. We witness the conversion. You make a declaration that you are entering into a covenant with Hashem, and we witness the conversion to say that this conversion process was done according to halakha. If you start doing things you're not supposed to do, you can't predict what you do in the future. I have no responsibility for anything that you do afterwards. I do recognize the problem with a lack of education. Not that ongoing education is required, but I have seen people that converted that have went into a conservative synagogue and they weren't able to answer basic questions about Shabbat and Kashrut. So then they were left feeling like these people are asking me, "What do you mean you converted Orthodox, but you don't know what's kosher and what's not?" So that's why I open my classes once a week for people that need continuing education. It doesn't matter if you want to convert and you want to learn, if you've already converted and you need continuing education, or if you're already in a conversion process and you want to supplement that with a second opinion. It's open and welcome to all. Those who have already converted, those who haven't, born Jews, everybody's welcome.
But Rabbi, I mean, one last question. Sorry, Noah. So, like, why these kind of conversions are not encouraged or not recognized by the Beit Din of Israel?
So I'm very against what the Bet Din of Israel does. Number one, my understanding of Israel is that it is a secular country. It's not the resurrection of biblical Israel. There's lots of things happening there that should not be happening there. So just because something is not recognized by the Bet Din of Israel has nothing to do with is it halakhically sound. A conversion is not invalid because some people in Israel don't like it. So I have no control over what they accept, what they don't accept. Any conversion done 100% according to halakha in South America, the entire continent, my understanding is they are not recognized by the state of Israel. Does that mean it wasn't done according to halakha? Does that mean the sincerity of these converts is somehow invalid because they didn't get the approval of somebody else on the other side of the planet? In my opinion, the answer is no. If you are seeking to move to Israel, in order to let the allow you to do that and participate, you need their approval. So you need a conversion that they approve of. However, because they approve of it or reject it, has nothing to do with the actual conversion. And that's why I recommend you find the article by Mark Angel, former head of the RCA. It's on my channel. I did a video on each of the 14 pages. Conversion to Judaism, Halacha, Hashkafa, and Historic Challenge. And it presents the stories of many people. For example, this is worth mentioning. There was a rabbi over there named Chaim Druckman. He was on the rabbinut. He worked for the Israeli government. He had some position where people that converted, with conversions accepted by the state of Israel, his signature was what made it valid. Well, in divorce court, if there's any lawyers in the room, they'll tell you in criminal court, we see bad people looking their best, nice ties, dress shirts. But in civil court, we see good people behaving their worst. They're going after the mother of their children. This is a terrible person. I want custody and alimony. So in some divorce court, it came out that this woman is not following halakha. She's not frum. She's a convert. So they challenged, well, who converted her? And the answer was Rabbi Chaim Druckman. So they challenged his conversions. They said, well, I don't like the way he's doing conversions. So we're going to challenge the conversions of something like 5,000 people. And his conversions were accepted by the rabbinut. They threw the conversions of 5,000 people in jeopardy. It took a long time. It eventually got through the court, and the court made the right decision. You cannot nullify any of these conversions. So her conversion and every conversion that he signed is a valid conversion. So this goes to show because your conversion is accepted by somebody on the rabbinut doesn't mean it'll be converted tomorrow. It'll be accepted tomorrow. They can say, well, we used to like this rabbi on our Bet Din, in this case, Chaim Druckman, but they can say tomorrow I no longer like him. And I don't want these. Unfortunately, we have a court ruling now that says you can't do that anymore. But even after that court ruling, they said, okay, we have to accept the conversion because it was done. But you have to be frum for a certain amount of time after you convert. Where did the court say that? Where did any halakha say that? Nowhere does it say that we can nullify your conversion if you don't keep the law after you convert. There's even one rabbi, he performs conversions, unfortunately. He made a video that he put online saying that in some cases he converts people and he tells you the law says, yes, we have to marry you, we have to give you your ketubah, but it doesn't say where the ketubah has to be located. So we keep it in our office for a year. And if we find out a year after we converted you and we married you to your spouse, if you're not living up to our Orthodox standards, forget that you're, living up to Orthodox standards. If you're not living up to our standards, we don't like it that you're drinking kosher milk, like Chalav Stam. We want you drinking Chalav Israel. If we find out you're not doing that, we're going to rip up your ketubah. We're going to rip up your certificate that you converted. and we're going to say, you know what, your conversion wasn't sincere, so you've never been in possession of your conversion certificate or your marriage certificate for a year after you converted. I think this is wrong. And I think you now have halakhically Jewish Jews running around under the impression that they're not Jewish because the rabbi that converted them violated halakha, nullified their conversion, and ripped up all their paperwork a year after they converted, which should have been handed to them right after they converted. So you have rabbis doing this thing, and I think it's unfortunate. And I can't change anybody else's behavior. All I can do is provide an alternative for people who don't want to be subjected, or for people who have unfortunately already gone through things like this. I kind of forgot the original question. I kind of got rambling there, but I tend to do that sometimes.
Thanks for that. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
One last question from Maya.
They're really sorry, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm just on the move. I apologize for the noise.
Yeah.
It just sounds like part of the scam as well, Rav, is, I mean, the entire fact that it is that after the immersion of a mikvah, or in a mikvah, and saying, yes, we will take on the 613 mitzvot, etc., that we are perfect.
Perfect.
I think this is, that we are perfect. I think this is the biggest scam or the biggest flaw in one's thinking.
Yes.
Because we're meant to be here to progress. And also, not everyone can keep 613 mitzvot because some of them are specifically for the Kohanim.
Right.
So how can one enter that and say, yes, I'm going to do it, knowing that they can't actually fulfill it? Like, so I think that is one of the scams ever. I think it is saying, yes, I have the basics, and I'm going to do my best to learn, to grow, to do better tomorrow than I did yesterday or today.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's just with regards to the whole kashrut and, the Shabbat laws and everything. Sorry, that's all I wanted to say.
That's a great point. If you fall for the Noahide scam, you're going to experience spiritual stagnation. You're not going to be trying to improve. My definition of a good Jew is not one who's perfect, because such a Jew doesn't exist. It's one who's getting better, one who's doing less averot this year than he did last year. As long as he's fulfilling a certain amount of mitzvot this year and he intends to fulfill more next year, then he's on the right trajectory. There's a well-known concept that if we can get every Jew to keep Shabbat fully for 1 or 2 Shabbat in a row, then we can bring Mashiach. Now, anyone that knows a lot of Jews or goes to any amount of synagogues, they know this is probably not going to happen. In fact, many rabbis are not even encouraging you to be frum. They're just trying to get you to show up. They're mislabeling apostates as Tanokh Shanishba. I know he doesn't want to be religious. He knows what the religion is. He doesn't want anything to do with it, but I'm going to call him a Tanokh Shanishba. We just hope that he'll show up and then become religious. So if we're not going to be able to do that, then we're not going to bring Mashiach by that mechanism. So there's another concept. I don't know how well known it is, but Rabbi Yitzhak Breitowitz, the head of Or Sameach, he explains on this that we don't need to be discouraged. If most of the work has already been done by the Avot, by our fathers, then 99% of what it needs to happen for us to bring Mashiach has already been done. Then all we need to do is fulfill enough mitzvot to push us over the tipping point. Which means everyone that comes to convert, they are the most sincere people. They're willing to do whatever we tell them. They'll eat whatever we tell them to eat. They won't do anything we tell them not to do. They're going to try harder than most of us are going to try. By not letting them in, we're taking all this wasted potential and throwing it away. When you convert these people, they might not keep everything perfectly, just like every born Jew we know is not going to keep everything perfectly, but they're going to be doing mitzvot. They're going to be tipping the scales. They're going to be helping us do that last bit that we need to do to get us over the tipping point. And rather than getting the feeling, well, why do I even need to do anything more. I'm already keeping the 7, you know. They can keep working and benefiting. Look, I myself am benefiting from all kinds of things. Laws of Lashon Hara. I mean, there are people that come to me and they ask me for things, and I've had serious disagreements with other rabbis. And I tell them, listen, this rabbi has experience in this, he can help you in that. And I send them to these people. They don't even need to know that there's ever been a problem between me and that other individual, because things like Rechilut, Lashon Hara, Motzi Shemra, these are all things on how we speak about each other. If for these lessons and these goals, I'd be engaging in all. Don't talk to this guy. You know what he said? There's better people out there. I don't engage in that. I'm here to help people, and there's lots of lessons that we can all benefit from. Why would you not benefit from that? Why would you tell these people, no, you don't need to benefit from any of these things? So I think we need to bring them in. And especially since this is the cream of the crop, the people that love us the most, these are the most devout people that are willing to put in the most effort. And I think it's wrong to push them away. I mean, we're suffering, we're losing, we're missing out by not letting them in.
Just one really last question from Zuhair, and we need to finish. So Zuhair, just if you can do it, please, very quickly.
Yeah. Shalom, Rabbi. Rabbi, I want to ask, like you mentioned, there is Rabbi Ashram Meza, biggest conversions in India. Rabbi, why is it that, like, other people, like the other congregations, do not recognize these conversions? And is there any halakhic basis for them to reject these conversions? Like, they say that, okay, yes, we recognize that the conversion was done halakhically, like the convert was studied and like they did everything, they studied and it was done halakhically, but because it was not recognized, like not a recognized congregation, so it's not a valid conversion. Is that a halakhic basis for them to reject such a conversion?
No, there is no halakhic basis for them for them doing that at all. I encourage everybody to learn the halakha. So you can say, okay, if that's not a valid conversion, show me what was done, which halakha was violated. I mean, he records the conversions, so you can see this is a kosher mikvah. Everything was followed. These are the bet din, these are the witnesses on it. So there's no basis for it whatsoever, and they're telling people that are halakhically Jewish, no, you're not. That would be like me saying, oh, your mother's Jewish, you're halakhically Jewish. I don't like the synagogue that you attend. I don't like the behavior that you go through. No native born Jew that was born Jewish would engage in that behavior. So therefore, you're not really Jewish. You can't nullify a halakhic status like that unless halakha was violated. Even a born Jew, they want to marry, they have to prove. We can't just take your word for it. They have to prove you're halakhically Jewish. If it was proven everything is halakhically sound, then you can't nullify the status. So they are mistreating converts by telling them that they're not halakhically Jewish. So there's no basis for that. There's no historic precedent for that. As a matter of fact, just to learn history, there's debates about what completes the conversion. Do we need to circumcise before or after the mikvah? And Rashi says it has to be done before for 2 reasons. Number one, this would be problematic if we put a person in a mikvah and then he chooses not to circumcise because the mikvah completes the conversion process. If he goes into a mikvah, he's Jewish. And so that's why one of the reasons why we do the circumcision before, Hatafatam Brit, if he's already been circumcised, because the mikvah. For this reasons, we used to have slaves, and we used to let them bathe with a chain around their neck so that they can't go down all the way under. Because if the slave jumps in the mikvah and says, I'm doing this for conversion, if his head goes under and he announces in front of the bet din that I'm doing this for the purpose of conversion, he is Jewish and he gets his freedom. Will anybody come along and say, no, that's not the way we do conversion, so I don't want to recognize your conversion? It was accepted by the Sanhedrin. This person is now Jewish. So who are these people to come along and say, yes, Asher did it according to halakha. There's nothing that I can point to that says that's not a halakhic conversion. But because I choose to do them differently in my congregation, the way he did it is somehow wrong, and I don't recognize the conversion. There's no basis for that, and it's very shameful. And this is why I want everyone to learn the halacha so you can say, just show me on what basis is it that you can nullify the conversion. And then we'll look at the halacha, we'll examine the commentary, and if we're wrong, we'll admit, okay, we missed something. We need to correct whatever was not done halakhically. We need to get a new bet din. We need to do it the right way. But he's been doing this for a long time. He's probably converted more people to Judaism than anybody else on the planet. And so far, we've never found a single person to say, yeah, this really wasn't done the right way. So I think you're being mistreated if you're being told his conversion specifically were not done according to halacha.
Rabbi Yosef Chaim, thank you so much for this session. It was so informative, and I think we got important tools on how to deal with this scam.
All right. Thank you for having
so
me.
much.
And if anyone wants to reach me, Noah can put them in touch. But thank you for having me, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for having me for attending.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.